Talk to me. WSRadio.com.
The San Diego Council on Literacy brings you Literacy for All with your host, Jose Cruz.
Welcome to the show. I'm Jose Cruz from the San Diego Council on Literacy. You're listening to the Literacy for All radio show on WS Radio, and we have in the studio today a old-time partner from, actually, God, there's so many careers that you have. We're here today with Leslie Shelton. Leslie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jose.
And we're going to have a good time today, talk about old times and just some of the projects and why you're in San Diego today, because you're doing a training for us for the San Diego Council on Literacy and its affiliated program partners. Tracy, we were talking about Tracy. Leslie, I'm going to give you a new name. You have different careers and such. I mean, I think a lot of us know you from library-based literacy programs and then your leadership work as an advocate for adult literacy students in the purest sense. But tell us the different things that you've done, because I think for folks who know you and who are listening to the show, they're going to be surprised that you did all these other things. You know, you and I got to talk yesterday.
So I've actually had kind of an interesting career, and one of the things that I would often tell students, I worked in career planning really in my first job. I have an undergrad degree in health education and health and physical education, but I decided I didn't want to teach. And so I went on, got a master's degree in college student personnel, and began my career in higher ed. So I worked in career planning. I ran a counseling center at a number of colleges and universities. And I did that for about 8 years. So I traveled. My first job was at the University of Maine. So I was out in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of Maine. And I turned the job down initially because I thought, I'm never going to understand what they're saying. Basically, I went from higher ed, illustrated a book, brought it out to deliver to Monterey Peninsula and said, okay, this is where I want to live.
Well, that's the thing, because we see you as a Bay Area person. So we only have like a piece of the Leslie Shelton story, because you're East Coast.
Yeah, I grew up in Pennsylvania on a farm, 10th generation farm kid. One of the benefits of that, and it'll tie into when we talk a little bit more about interest in how people learn, is I grew up outside, and the naturalist is an intelligence we don't really give a lot of credit to.
Are you saying you literally were born outside? Or
No, I just grew up outside.
I grew up outside, okay. So
I was out on a farm.
We got a puppy in the studio.
We got a visitor.
Yeah,
so basically what brought me to California was really illustrating a book, and it was an old Buddhist Hindu tale. And once I got here, I had to find a job, so I wound up getting a position as the executive director of the American Cancer Society when I was 30 years old. So that's where I learned to run programs. And I think what I was telling Jose, so this will, I think, tie in, is after 6 years of doing that, I really missed education in higher ed. And I was starting to job hunt, and a friend walked in and laid a job announcement in front of me and said, this is your next job. And I was like, no way. And it was to start an adult literacy program in the library systems in California. And that was 1985. I was 36 years old. And I was like, no way, I don't know anything about reading and writing. I know a lot about learning and running programs. So I got the job, and the rest is history.
And I started the same year you did, but I was just at the same time kind of teaching. So we go back, good 33, 34 years. I have to take you back just a little bit. I mean, how many people was it a thing to go into college student personnel work, one? And two, how did that help you with other things that you did later on?
Well, my training really was in both managing and administration in a certain way, and it was also counseling. So my master's degree in counseling and then career planning really as a focus, I was focused on people's capabilities. When you help people look for a job, you look at three things. What are their skills? What are their values? What do they love? What are they good at? and what are their interests. And so that was always a very core piece when I got into literacy, was looking at people's capacities, not their incapacities.
Very good. So you're kind of used to doing that inventory, because we talk about the it's not the, what do we call that first thing that we do? It's not orientation. It's the, is it the orientation? Is that what, student orientation?
Student orientation.
Or intake.
In the intake interview, the assessment. Mm-hmm. And my first concern was you bring a person in for an intake interview, mm-hmm. and the first thing this is what led later to my doctoral research in a way, is that we asked them about their early school experience, and half of them would cry. That's an incredibly, for them, a painful experience. Mm-hmm. And then we have them do a reading and writing assessment, mm-hmm. which is incredibly embarrassing for them. Walking in the door. And then we try and figure out how to welcome them, or we're trying to welcome them, and the first thing you've done is scare the heck out of them in a way. So what I found was really interesting is instead of looking first at what they couldn't do, mm-hmm. you find out what they can do. What's your work? How do you do this?
Mm-hmm. Very good, very good. And, I talk about 1985, and I know there were programs that started earlier. And I don't mean this in a bad way, because we did so much good work, and we're still doing that. But I also call it a time when we didn't know what we were doing. There was a whole lot that we had to discover. Yeah. I mean, we could have learned from maybe what you were doing in your intake sessions.
Well, there was a certain beauty in it, and I think we were talking about this yesterday. The state library, in creating the adult literacy programs, the state librarian, Gary Strong, I mean, his curiosity was, how is it that we can have the community help other people in the community? Mm-hmm. Can we help students learn to read? And we only had really 4 parameters that we needed to follow. So interestingly, we had a lot of freedom to be creative. And what I really loved, having been in educational systems, both higher ed and, doing all my student teaching and looking at education today, the structures within education and the focus so much on assessment and testing and performance winds up really kind of putting a box on people's creativity. Mm-hmm. And what I loved about being in the library, I literally, when I was hired, had 4 walls. I had no furniture, no staff. Mm-hmm. The only thing I had was the assurance that I had a reading and writing specialist to help us look at the training component. So even though we didn't have a lot to start with, in some ways there was expertise in the field we could pull in. Yeah. But I had the ability to bring in more.
Well, there was pioneering happening.
Yes.
I mean, we know that. And Gary Strong's vision, well, one, he recognized there was a problem with adult literacy that we weren't having a conversation about. But one of the other things that was happening, and tell me if I have this right, I think nowadays when you look at library-based literacy programs, you might or might not be a librarian.
Correct.
But back then, going in the door, you had the library staff, and then here was this incredible group of people coming in the door who were not librarians, who they had great ideas, skilled, wanted to do this, had a passion for it, and made this thing happen. Accurate?
Yeah. I do agree, and I think to their credit, I had a really innovative library director who was very interested in the community and supporting the community, and she was very creative and interested in creativity. So I was given a fair amount of latitude to really figure out what matters and how do you do it. But because of my experience as the executive director of the Cancer Society, I was used to working with all levels of boards and money and doctors and training and cancer patients. And so in a way, the literacy piece to me was an interesting opportunity to heal a wound. Mm-hmm. And, we can go further there.
Yeah, we can. I mean, and we're going to. I mean, they're just the experiences that you had, that I had, that a lot of us had, with dealing with folks who didn't want to be found, right? Yeah. And here they are. They and we call it courageous. And it's like, I was wondering, is this courageous? It is that they made a phone call, that they came in, that they faced up to their demons and the things that were just stopped them from learning. And so you're going to do that presentation on the emotional, or the role that emotions play in teaching and learning and stuff. Yep. But you had that experience early on, hundreds of times.
Yeah.
Were you often the intake person with your program?
I was at the beginning.
Okay.
I was, and that's where I really got to see the incredible capacities that they had, but I also got to see this hidden wound, and it was hidden. And I remember, because I'm a health educator first and then a counselor second, and then I get into being a literacy specialist. But we had a celebration event after the first year of our program. And I remember standing up in front of the group, and this was 35 years ago, and saying, you know what, we think, the program's about helping people improve their reading and writing for their lives. But what there is really about is healing a broken heart. They think their minds are broken. Their minds aren't broken. It's their hearts that are broken.
Yeah, and see, and so what are we trying to do? We're trying to quantify intangibles, and counting numbers, and we've had this is a whole other area of conversation, I think, where we've had to where good things are happening. We call it the affective domain, right? Good things are happening. People are becoming confident. They're feeling like they're letting loose of some of the baggage that they've had, and they're trying new things and opening their mail and really taking in consideration that they can do this reading thing that they couldn't do their whole lives. But part of what had to happen is that people like you, people in the California Literacy Campaign back then, had to make people feel comfortable about doing that. So we're going to come back to that, Leslie, and just a number of other things that you're going to be helping us with today and on this radio show. You're listening to the Literacy for All radio show. I'm Jose Cruz, and we're on WS Radio, the worldwide leader in Internet talk. We'll be right back.
Take your smartphone almost everywhere you go. Now WSRadio.com can be there too. Search WS Radio in the Play Store for your Android devices or iTunes for Apple, and download the WS Radio application. WSRadio.com, on your phone and in your ear everywhere you go. Download the WS Radio application. Do it now. It's very easy. WSRadio.com.
Looking to be a successful entrepreneur? The virtual assistant industry continues to be a top choice for those looking to start their own business. The problem can be how to become a virtual assistant. Many turn to the Bible of the VA industry, the book Virtual Assistant, the series, and it's the perfect guide for office managers, executive assistants, and other administrative professionals looking to make the transition from employee to successful business owner. Go to vatheseries.com to get your copy today.
Small businesses are the lifeblood of America's economy. Every Thursday, SBA Radio interviews industry professionals and is dedicated to provide small businesses with timely insights and innovations. Visit www.sbaradio.us for details.
Homeless veterans and their families are suffering and need our support, but many won't ask or don't know that help is within reach. Veterans Community Services is here to help. Amazingly, about 35% of the homeless in our neighborhoods are veterans with families. Low-income veterans or their friends are encouraged to contact Veterans Community Services and reach out for help with housing and other services. Call now, 800-974-9909.
I raised $8,000 to build schools for South African children. After realizing how many people go hungry in San Diego, I now volunteer at a food pantry.
I'm spending the next year doing volunteer projects across 3 countries and helping in ways they designate to be the most helpful.
The World Link program at the Joan B. Kroc Institute for Peace and Justice recognizes the potential of youth as agents of social change. Learn how you can help youth become a generation of leaders in action at peace.sandiego.edu.
Can you imagine a world without children? A world where children don't play, or dream, or imagine.
At St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, we're working every day to find cures for diseases that strike down children, because we can't imagine a world without children. Can you?
Finding cures, saving children. St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. To learn how you can help, log on to our website, stjude.org.
Donate cash, furniture, clothes, and other gently used household items to Father Joe's Villages and get a nice tax break in April. Every donation is tax deductible. Believe you can make a difference. Be Father Joe. Go to neighborhood.org or call 1-800-HOMELESS to donate today.
Talk to me. WSRadio.com.
The San Diego Council on Literacy brings you Literacy for All with your host, Jose Cruz.
Welcome back to the show. I'm Jose Cruz. You're listening to the Literacy for All radio show on WS Radio. Our guest is Leslie Shelton, and we were talking a bit about, a number of things, her background, and then just the early years of running literacy programs in the California Literacy Campaign, now called California Library Literacy Services. So they changed the name. We've come a long ways, and in fact, just during the break, we're talking about the things that we wish we had knew back then that we know now, and it's now we know them better, and we can do some things. Leslie, we were talking at the break about the intake process and just the emotional aspect of it, and people kind of getting through that first wave of things. I'm not sure how much I'm going to try to have you make the connection here, because you also did work in learner advocacy, learner, kind of like the learner movement, I think we were calling it, or something like it back then. What was the rationale for getting learners involved? And I know one of them is advocacy, because we needed their voices for funding. Yeah. So what else was happening?
Well, this was what I found really interesting and what triggered it. So I had done a lot of leadership work. I was a president of student government when I was in college, so I'd been a student leader. And I had done a lot of leadership training in other areas. So interestingly, Cal Lit had a conference about 1988, so about 3 years in.
Was that one in San Diego?
1987. It was down here.
San Diego State University, if I recollect. Yeah.
And there was a track for the first time for adult learners. And so I made the decision to pay for 3 of our adult learners to come along to the conference. And this was considered groundbreaking in terms of having a separate thing available for the students. This
conference is not for learners.
Yeah, and we had tutors who really were not too happy that, what are these learners doing here? But side point, or really the main point here, is that the learners were very excited. They were very pleased to come down. But it was a separate track, and they had no choices. So one of the guys who came with me worked in the field of business, and he was very competent. Gary Brewer was his name. And as we were flying home on the airplane, going back, said, well, how was that for you? What was this experience like for you? And they all said it was a nice idea, but we felt very controlled and pigeonholed. Like we had no choices. The tutors had all these choices, but we didn't.
And the presenters didn't know what to do with learners.
No, and Gary went into the room, and then the tutors were saying, well, if you're a student, you shouldn't be in here. So on the airplane flying home, I said, you know what? We can do a conference that's for adult learners by adult learners. That was the beginning, and we created the 12 literacy programs in the Bay Area. I said, what do you think about trying to create a conference that is run by the learners, it was co-created. So that was the beginning, and it was really a need to actually find a way to give them an experience which validated not only their capacities, but their humanness.
And do you remember the year and the location of that conference?
Well, the Adult Learner Conference, the first one, was 1989. It was the first in the nation. We actually got a letter from Barbara Bush, and it was at Cheney College, and we didn't know who would come. We had 300 adult learners come, and it was all adult learners.
Was it San Francisco or Oakland?
Oakland.
Okay, I think I might have been. That's why I'm asking. I think I was there.
You were there.
Or the second one, I don't know.
Yeah, we did the first one, and then we did a second one. But the fascinating piece there was, like, Sharice Oakman, who's still in some ways very involved, adult learner, lives in Arizona now. But she said to me, Leslie, I had my friend Myra drag me from the Oakland Literacy Program to this meeting of other adult learners to plan this conference. And she said, I was sitting around the table, And she said, I finally said, well, where are the adult learners? And she said, everybody in here is an adult learner. That the pictures we hold.
Yeah. And I've heard it. Oh, you can't tell. Okay, yes. I mean, they're human beings. Hello.
Yeah.
What are they supposed to look like?
Yeah, so we went on and did three major conferences. We had a statewide conference that we were involved in. And then I brought in national issues forums. It's because the issue is around having a voice also. So that's another tangent.
So was that a first time to bring NIF into literacy conference? Because I remember doing this in Concord. And just how exciting it was.
It was kind of an experiment, and Paul Kiley said, hey, Leslie, would you be willing to kind of try this out? The folks, it was Kettering Foundation, National Issues Forums. What they found was they were doing conversations all around the United States, but they found they weren't bringing in, they were bringing in very educated folks. They weren't reaching the full public. Right. So they had an experiment. Could we work with literacy programs? And they wrote the actual guides at 6th grade reading level in order to see, can we reach a different population? They were incredibly powerful in having people feel a sense of, like, I can talk about this. This makes sense.
Yeah, this is my area.
I understand this. Yeah. They wouldn't vote. They weren't voting because they didn't think that they understood issues.
My. So that happened. I don't know if it was, California, right?
Yeah, California.
We have to pat ourselves on the back. And this took what you were doing actually to a national basis.
Yeah.
Something called the National Adult Learner Congress?
Yes, yeah.
Is that what it was?
Well, there was a National Adult Learner Congress, 1988, that was, in which, and this was Laubach, I think, or LVA sponsored it. Anyway,
possibly United Way was involved, maybe, and Laubach.
But they had one adult learner from every state come in, and actually they met in Philadelphia in Congress Hall. And the student from California actually happened to be in my program. That was Gary Brewer. That was the guy who said, "Hey, what's going on here?"
Yeah. Well, the thing, and we still say this, and I think we're not doing as much today as we used to. And I start off a lot of my presentations with, look, I can stand up here an hour and 2 hours and talk to you about literacy, but I'm not going to be able to do in 2 hours what an adult literacy student can do in 10 minutes. And then you'll understand what's going on here.
Yeah.
These are real people. These things happen to them. People are shocked that anybody could go to school reading at a 2nd or 3rd grade level, and here they are. And they have a story to tell.
Yeah.
And
they use their other competencies or capacities, but sadly, because reading is seen as the key sign of intelligence, they see themselves as incapable as learners, and that's one of the hardest things that I saw over time.
And we're going to have more conversation about that. Given what you know today, because I know you've gone on, you've done other things, you're still doing other research and projects and stuff, and we talked last night about the next 10 great years.
Yeah, that's right.
And we have a lot that we still want to do. Are there things that we should be doing today to put this cause in front of the public that we used to do? Are we missing those testimonials? What's happening? Have we gotten used to the idea that there are people who can't read and write well?
That's an interesting question. I think the thing that I've been looking at more is my concern is at the school level that in some ways things haven't changed in terms of a child goes to school and they expect to succeed. It's a passage. It's a rite of passage. And they get there and they're all excited. And then they slowly start to fail, not measure up to some norm. Right. And for reading and writing, how do we teach reading and writing? You read in front of your peers. That's a daily experience of humiliation for adults, for children. Yeah. And so where my concern is then the emphasis on testing. So kids shut down. We shut down very quickly. And what I found was in my own research on early school shame, the early school experience, was that by the end of 2nd grade, that image is in the experience, and I'll talk more about it.
See, we don't think kids
later.
know that much when they're
No.
8, 7. They're already developing strategies and an identity.
Yeah, they're totally and it's identity. And this is why I got into the role of emotions and learning, is really the emotional system. Emotions always, quote, trump learning, cognition. If you're upset, you can't think. And so what happens is the experience of that daily exposure of not measuring up, and testing does part of that, reading in front of your peers, all those, the exposure of a weakness, it puts a picture in, and it's in by second grade, of I'm not capable, I'm dumb, I'm stupid. And so it messes up motivation, giving up, running away, and then we try and figure out what to do. So I know your question was a different question, but I think having people understand where this harm starts is really critical.
And so there's an educational piece to it, because with the adult learner, for example, adult learner testimonials, you're going to feel the pain. You're going to see that this is real, but you're still not going to understand the source of it.
No, or why it happens and what to do about it.
Yeah.
And for parents, I've been working a lot with parents, and parents carry the same issue around their child failing. What can I do? Then they feel helpless. Yeah. And so it's not just one child.
Yeah, and so and school systems and such. So we're going to come back to that, especially the whole idea of, hey, let's meet people where they are where they have strengths, things that they can show us. You did some work in the intelligences, and I have a question about that for you. So we're going to be back with Leslie Shelton. You've been listening to the Literacy for All radio show on WS Radio, the worldwide leader in Internet talk.
Nowadays, internet devices are an integral part of your home. Everyone in your family has a smartphone, tablet, or a computer. Life is easier knowing that all your devices are secured and your family can surf the internet carefree. ESET Multi-Device Security Pack does just that. One license for all your devices. With ESET, it's simple to stay protected and save money. Enjoy safer technology with ESET Multi-Device Security Pack at ESET.com. That's ESET.com.
On the internet, your business's reputation can be unjustly destroyed in an instant. Don't wait for that to happen. Building and marketing your 5-star reputation can increase your business by as much as 19%. Take control of your reputation and have the 5-star reputation you deserve with Reputation Marketing Solutions by DSI Development. Become the go-to company by visiting 5starrepmarketing.com. The number 5starrepmarketing.com.
Hey, it's Catherine from Listen Local Radio. Moe's Guitars has proudly served the San Diego music community since 1975. Specializing in guitars, basses, mandolins, banjos, and ukuleles, they buy, sell, trade, and consign. If you're looking for lessons, repairs, accessories, and cool gear, you found the right place. Located in downtown La Mesa Village, stop by and check out their digs or visit moesguitars.com or their Facebook page, mozeguitars.com, 619-698-1185.
Tired of presentations with no impact, no inspiration, and no traction? Do dull speakers have you and your team disengaged and distracted by smartphones? Christopher McAuliffe brings energy, insights, and 2 decades of experience, delivered with punch, humor, and heart. Your team will leave energized, uplifted, and with a sense of purpose. Visit ChristopherMcAuliffe.com to bring some heat to your next speaking engagement. McAuliffe. ChristopherMcAuliffe.com. Nowadays, internet devices are an integral part of your home. Everyone in your family has a smartphone, tablet, or a computer. Life is easier knowing that all your devices are secured and your family can surf the internet carefree. ESET Multi-Device Security Pack does just that. One license for all your devices. With ESET, it's simple to stay protected and save money. Enjoy safer technology with ESET Multi-Device Security Pack at ESET.com. That's ESET.com. Tired of presentations with no impact, no inspiration, and no traction? Do dull speakers have you and your team disengaged and distracted by smartphones? Christopher McCullough brings energy, insights, and 2 decades of experience, delivered with punch, humor, and heart. Your team will leave energized, uplifted, and with a sense of purpose. Visit ChristopherMcCullough.com to bring some heat to your next speaking engagement. MCAULIFFE. ChristopherMcCullough.com.